Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Power of TrustYou. My name is Valerie. I'm the VP of Marketing here at TrustYou, and I'm excited to welcome you all to this event series that we've had at TrustYou since the beginning of 2021, where we'll guide our users through the current features and new updates available in the TrustYou platform. So thank you all so much for joining today. Just a few housekeeping items to start while people are still logging into the session. We do have you all muted on the line, but we do want to be able to be interactive in the session and ask questions. So we'll use our online components. You can chat us your questions in the chat box. There's also a questions box in the GoToWebinar control panel. So you can let us know if you want any more information about any of the topics that we discussed today. Also, a quick reminder, you may have seen in the last reminder email that we sent out that there will be one lucky winner announced at the end of the session who will receive a $50 Amazon gift card. So if you're staying through the end of the session today, not only will you get a lot of great content, but you'll also be eligible to win that prize. So we'll announce that at the end of today's session today. Also, I want to let you all know that the webinar will be recorded today, so if you have any colleagues that weren't able to make it or you do need to jump off the line, you'll be able to get all of the same information in the recording, and that will be sent out in the coming days after today's presentation. But without further ado, let's officially get started. We have a full agenda today, so in just a few moments, I'm going to, we'll have TrustYou customer Rainier Meissner, who is an e-commerce and digital marketing manager at Leonardo Hotels, share his story about how their hotels are using review analytics to measure and promote their high cleanliness standards. Then we will also be doing something a little bit different today than in our previous webinars. We're actually going to spend about 20 minutes today sharing best practices from our enterprise services team. So Mike Steinberg will join us to show you how you can use TrustYou reports, tiles, and dashboards to improve your scores and benchmark against your competitors. So thank you all if you've attended previous sessions in the past for submitting that feedback that you wanted to hear more best practices. So we're going to be spending a lot of time on that today. And finally, in the second half of the session, we'll have members of our product management team take you through some of TrustYou's newest features and share a quick preview of what's to come before the end of the year. So we will get started with our first agenda point. You can see that laid out here, that we'll start with our customer presentation with Leonardo Hotels. So I actually had the pleasure of being able to speak to Rainier last week. We recorded our session together today so that we were able to show them on both of the live webinars that we're producing today. We have one right now, and then we'll have one in an EMEA and US friendly time zone. So without further ado, I will share our recording now so that you can all hear from Rainier himself. And you're going to see a little bit of a double me on this as we also recorded this via GoToWebinar. So I hope you enjoy the quick presentation that we have here today. All right, so hello, Rainier. Thank you so much for talking to us today about your experience with TrustYou. As we understand it, you're with Leonardo Hotels. So can you start out just by telling us a little bit more about your company and your role within it?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me for this interview. I'm happy to be here. Yes, I work for Leonardo Hotels. We are an international company, actually having more than 200 hotels in the world, mostly focused on Israel and Europe. We have hotels in several countries like Spain, Italy, Hungary, Israel, a lot of hotels because the original company was Fatal Hotel, or is Fatal Hotels. And the European branch is Leonardo Hotels. Yeah, but we work very close together. I'm actually responsible for our online reputation management, and I also work for the performance marketing of our chain. So
I'm a little bit in marketing and in operations.
Exactly. I'm basically the main contact for TrustYou on the side of Leonardo Hotel. So usually every communication goes over me, and I bring the infos and the information and the tasks down to the ground level, on the manager level for the hotels.
Perfect. Well, thank you for being that middleman for us. We appreciate it. So since you are the main point of contact for TrustYou, what we were hoping to go through today was just to talk a little bit more about your experience with it, so that we can share that with some of our other TrustYou customers that might be not as familiar at this moment with everything that they can do with online reputation management. In this session, we're actually really focused on the new semantic categories that we created under public health and safety, and to talk a little bit about the cleanliness specific categories. So that's something that I know that your team is using. So since the pandemic, how have your hotels been thinking about cleanliness differently than they were before?
Yeah, this is actually basically an industry changer. This whole new situation of the pandemic, everyone is concerned about health, about safety at the hotel. So it's very important that, especially an industry like the hotel industry, reacts quickly on a situation that changes so abruptly and changes our daily life, basically. And especially in a hotel where a person is not at home, the person would not feel 100% safe if we don't ensure that the person feels safe. And that's why several measurements that we had to take to give the customer basically the feeling of feeling safe, feeling absolutely not at risk at any place that he's not used or she's not used to. So that's why we also use TrustYou as a system to make sure on one hand with the Cleanliness Patch, or on the other hand with precise reporting, make sure that our customers are satisfied, that the customers don't have this feeling of uncertainty, unsafety in our hotels. And this was a helpful tool to make sure that we have this going.
Right, exactly. So to expand on that a little bit, you were actually looking at your guest reviews and being able to filter out who was talking about cleanliness. So are you looking differently at those keywords, or have you found anything particularly interesting from digging into those reviews a bit more?
Yes, I mean the daily life of the hotel, the daily work process of the hotel completely changed. We enabled several processes to make sure that we have safety at the hotel. For example, in the restaurants, for the breakfast, the people have to follow certain time slots. In some hotels, they have to come at certain times, so we have the general load of people in the place limited or reduce the risk. We have gloves, we insist on masks in hotels, and so on. And all these measures can, of course, have a negative or a positive impact on our customers. So we basically started at the start of the pandemic with filtered reporting of all the reviews of the whole chain. So we analyze reviews, or we filter the reviews out that specifically focus on Corona or COVID-19 or any virus mentions when people feel concerned about their health. And then we take a look at these reviews. What is very apparent? What do you see immediately? What is the biggest problem right now? Which cluster, for example, has a bigger problem than another cluster in the chain? For example, this cluster might have not gone through enough procedures to ensure the safety, or there are some mistakes in the process. And this can be identified with these reviews that can filter out this way. And we saw actually a very interesting progress. At first, most of the mentions were negative. People complained about the handling of Corona. This is normal. When you start a process, everything is not going smooth from the first moment on. But we worked hard. We managed this on a higher level and pushed it through to every hotel, which also is more difficult because we have different countries with different governmental regulations, And we usually went beyond the limitations of the government institutions and try to ensure the biggest safety and hygiene at our hotels as possible. So we saw the development that first the people complained about Corona, but by now, most of my reviews that I get with this filtered report are complimenting us basically about good, efficient Corona measurements. And this is really interesting, and also shows how we developed in this time frame of 1 or 1.5 years, how we got better in enabling this advanced hygiene progress.
So would you recommend to hotels that have taken similar measures, that they have ensured that they're using high cleanliness standards and safety standards, that if they start collecting more reviews at this point from guests, that they actually might be more positive than negative at this point?
At this point, I think so. For most of our hotels, we have positive feedback for the Corona keywords, basically. Yeah.
Wonderful. So your hotels actually took an assessment that we created around cleanliness standards. And when you pass the assessment, you're able to get a cleanliness badge. And that's something that your hotels are utilizing and promoting on your website. So what was the decision around doing that and making sure that the guests know that you have this TrustYou certified cleanliness right when they're coming to your website?
We realized pretty quickly when the pandemic started that the hygiene and the safety at the hotel is the absolute most important point for the guest. All of a sudden it changed. It's not important how much variety you have at the breakfast menu. The hygiene is the #1 priority for a hotel guest. So that's why we took these advanced measures and made sure that we have the hygiene at the hotel. And we also wanted to give the customer the feeling of safety. And the TrustYou Cleanliness Patch is a good method of signaling this to the guest. When they do the booking, they immediately see there's a badge of hygiene and safety, and it's a third party. So basically someone else double check the hygiene standards and can confirm that that the hotel is a safe environment for our customers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's crazy how things have changed. And you mentioned 1.5 years. I feel like I've been so used to just saying this past year, but yeah, it's been 1.5 years. We're reaching 2 years almost, and nothing's really changed. This seems to be kind of the new normal that we're going to be going through. So thank you so much for talking about your experience. I think that this will be very helpful for other hoteliers that are going through something similar. At least good reassurance that we're all in this together, and that there are steps that we can take to make sure that guests are still having a great experience.
Yes, thank you.
We won't play that again. We'll just go on to the next slide. So hopefully everyone could see that clearly. Definitely let us know if the video had good clarity. That will also be part of the recording, and then we also have the link separate on our YouTube channel. So if you just wanted to share that story with any colleagues, you could definitely do so. So some of the best practices that Rainier was sharing is kind of what sparked this next section that we wanted to dig into a little bit more, where we have our enterprise services representative, Michael Steinberg, here to kind of take you through an actual, first some interesting information about cleanliness standards and public health and safety, kind of the things that Rainier was mentioning. And then we'll actually go through a TrustYou demo after that with him, and he'll kind of show you where in your account you would be able to find some of these great features that can help you measure it even more closely. So Mike, I will hand things over to you.
All right, thanks a lot, Valerie. So there is no doubt that cleanliness, public health, hygiene have been at the top of everyone's mind for the past 1.5 years. As we just heard from Rainer, there is no exception for the hospitality industry. So guests have great concerns around cleanliness, topics around COVID, social distancing, hygiene, etc. The question then is, how does these concerns reflect on the feedback that guests are leaving us after they leave the hotel? What story do we have behind the data? And there any trends out there that we can recognize? So for this, we have analyzed a data set of 14 million reviews from November 2020 to July 2021 to spot any trends on potential keywords around these topics that we are mentioning. If you have a look at the lower lines in the graph that is displayed here, you can see that words around public health like COVID or safety or masks, for example, have remained at a stable trend, let's say, from November 2020 to July 2021. So they haven't increased in mentions, actually, but they haven't decreased either. So they're still relevant. They're still at the top of the head of our guests, as Rainer was mentioning. And if we have a look at the specific percentages, we see that, for example, the word COVID is being mentioned in 4.7% of the reviews in English. The words safe, safely, or safety are being mentioned in 2.5% of the reviews. And words like mask or face mask are being mentioned in almost 1% of the reviews. So it's a significant amount of mentions. These are important topics. Guests are talking a lot about them still. So it's good to keep them in mind, as Rainer was mentioning. However, there is a even more interesting trend in here around the keywords of clean, cleaned, cleanliness. We have seen that these words are being mentioned more frequently since last year. So you can see the upper line on the graph below has a clear trend upwards. So these keywords are being mentioned more and more often throughout the guest feedback. And we see that they're being mentioned in 25.5% out of these 14 million reviews that we have analyzed. So that's 1 out of every 4 reviews is talking about one of these 3 keywords alone. So it's pretty clear that cleanliness is a relevant topic for guests nowadays, and it has increased in relevance for them. The question then is this increased relevance for guests perceived as positive? Is it perceived as negative? What is also the perception of the measures that have been implemented by hotels in terms of public health and safety? So if we can please go to the next slide. Here we will have a look at the underlying sentiments of what guests have said about these specific categories. For this, we have analyzed over tens of thousands of hotels using TrustYou, their data for the previous years, to understand how these semantic categories are performing throughout the time. First of all, we had a look at a KPI that is also available at your TrustYou dashboards, which is that of the sentiment score. And then we also analyzed the relative mention increase, which I'll explain in a second. So the sentiment score, you might know, tells you the percentage of positive reviews or positive mentions across all mentions that you have for a specific sentiment category. So sentiment category can be Wi-Fi, pool. In this case, we're focusing on public health and cleanliness. The relative mention increase is basically a percentage of how many mentions are there for this semantic category on a specific time frame, in this case, years, versus all mentions across all over 180 semantic categories available at TrustYou. As it is a relative number, it allows us to control for increasing and decreasing review volumes that have happened a lot because hotels have been closing or opening again due to governmental restrictions. So we use this relative number to understand any trends in mentions around these categories, regardless of increasing or decreasing review volumes. Now, if we have a look at these 2 KPIs for public health, for example, on the first table at the top, you can see that the relative mention increase has indeed increased from 2020 to 2021 by 1.5%. So it's not a significantly high number, but guests are indeed, as Rainer was mentioning, talking more about public health topics like safety, like face masks, social distancing. The question is it on a positive or on a negative light? if we analyze the sentiment score behind this public health semantic category, we can see that there has been an increase actually on the sentiment score. So the feedback is more positive around this. So indeed, guests are more happy about the measures that have been implemented by the hotels. They're happy that hotels are looking after their safety and thus are giving more positive reviews to the hotels. Now, on the other hand, we see a different story for cleanliness. So if we have a look at the relative mention increase for cleanliness, from 2019 to 2020, we see an increase of almost 9%, and from 2020 to 2021 of almost 6%. So guests are talking a lot more about cleanliness topics on their reviews. In this case, not under a favorable light. So if you can see, the sentiment score for this semantic category has decreased by almost 2% from 2019 to 2020, and by almost 1% to 68.66 by 2021. So guests are indeed talking more about cleanliness, but not under such a positive light. It doesn't necessarily mean that hotels are dirtier or are not looking into cleanliness topic. It might mean that this new topic of the pandemic has shed some light into hygiene. Guests are more aware of hygiene and are looking more into cleanliness topics and are more sensitive and critical towards these topics. So we also want to understand, is this trend impacting performance scores? So performance scores basically reflect your overall online reputation. They're an average of your online reputation for a specific time frame. And we want to understand, is this cleanliness trend impacting performance scores? So there's also a very interesting KPI available on your dashboards called impact scores, which basically tell you the top 3 positive and negative semantic categories that are influencing your performance scores. And we have analyzed, in this case, the negative ones for all the data set of hotels using TrustYou to understand which categories are appearing frequently here, in this case for the year 2020, to understand what are some relevant categories in here. And for example, if you see the lower table, the bathroom cleanliness category appeared in 19.03% of all impact scores. This means almost 1 out of every 5 hotels has this category, out of over 180 semantic categories available at TrustYou, appearing as a negative impact score. So this category is bringing the performance scores down. But even more significant is the room cleanliness category. So this category appears as a negative impact score in 52.8% of the hotels using TrustYou. That's over half of the hotels that use TrustYou have this category out of over 180 categories as a negative impact score, bringing down their performance score and their online reputation. So this is a very significant finding. This tells us that we really need to watch out for the room cleanliness category, that this is a category that hotels need to look into. And now we also want to understand what trends are there globally. Does this mean that hotels using TrustYou are underperforming, or are they doing better than their competitors? And what performance trends are there in a global level? So for this, we can go to the next slide. And in here, we would review the different trends that can be seen at a global level. So first of all, comparing hotels using TrustYou against their competitors, there is a relevant KPI that you might be aware of from your TrustYou dashboards, which is the comp index. In this case, we are interested in the comp index for the performance score. So we want to see if this comp index has increased or decreased across time. It's basically a ratio of your performance score versus the average performance score of your competitors. If it's higher than 1, it means you're overperforming. If it's lower than 1, it means that you're doing worse than your competition. And we wanted to spot if there are any positive or negative trends here. And actually, the comp index for the performance score for hotels using TrustYou has increased by almost 2.5% from 2019 to 2020, and 1.64% from 2020 to 2021. So actually, hotels that are using TrustYou have been doing better than their competition throughout these past 2 years. They have been improving their comp index in performance. So it seems hotels are indeed looking into the feedback that guests are leaving, and they're using this pandemic as a recovery to get a head start and do better than the competition. Now, if we have a look at the global trends that are displayed on the lower table, we can also see some interesting details in here. So here we have a segmentation by years and by star rating of hotels. And the first clear trend that we can see in here is that the higher the star rating, the higher the average performance score. So this data comes throughout all hotels on the TrustYou database. So we see some clear trend here also when comparing the years. So if you see from 2019 to 2020, all different segments for all different star ratings had a drop in their average performance scores. And in 2020-21, there has been a slight recovery, with one-star hotels actually completely recovering over levels of 2019, but all the other segments are still under the levels of 2019, so haven't fully recovered. So it could actually be that this small gap in the performance score is being caused by this negative even room cleanliness trend that we just saw before. So now that we understand that there is this trend out there, how can you analyze this? So what data can you use to act upon this trend? How can you use your TrustYou dashboards and reports to improve your online reputation? And for this, I'll be sharing a product demonstration with you. Well, I'll drive you through some of the most relevant KPIs that are being analyzed by our customers and our biggest brands using TrustYou. If you have any questions, we will of course have a session later on where you can ask any questions you might have. All right, so right now you can see we're here on your portfolio menu. So if you have an enterprise account, in here you would have your different portfolio groups. They can be segmented by regions, countries. In this case, we have them grouped by brands. Here you have what is called the overview table that allows you to add columns to this specific table. These columns can be added on this values and sources option. In this case, we're interested on the performance trend, of course, and we want to benchmark it against the previous period so that we want to see any underlying trends in performance scores for my portfolio. We also want to review these topics that we have discussed before of cleanliness and public health to see how the hotels are performing in these relevant topics. And we're interested on the previous quarter, as this is a recent time frame that has already finished. So all the data for this time frame is already computed, and we can compare then Q2 against Q1 to have some nice overview. Now, the value of these columns is that you can also click on them to filter by the highest or the lowest scores. This way, we can easily spot which are our portfolios that have the lowest cleanliness scores in here, and we see already some scores in red in here. And for example, let's take the example of the W Hotels brand in here. We see that the performance score has had a negative trend from Q1 to Q2 of over 1%. So the performance score has dropped, and cleanliness might be a reason for it, as we see quite the negative score in here. So now we already have this insight, but we want to deep dive more into it. We want to understand, okay, what is really going on at our W Hotels brand? For this, we have many valuable tiles. In this case, we will focus on the group sentiment tile, which has all your sentiment categories in here. Again, you can filter them by clicking on a specific column to see any underlying trends. And clearly, we spot cleanliness has a negative trend of almost 20%. We see again the negative score in here reflected, and it's going down. So we can recognize, okay, we might have to look into the cleanliness of this brand to see how we can improve. So we already have a holistic view of what's going on here. We have the overall picture. We see cleanliness is important. We might need to focus on this topic. Where do we get started? Well, an easy way to identify this is by focusing on the specific hotels that are bringing this score down. For this, you can always use custom tiles. So there are a powerful tool for this that you can always add from your add tile option. I have already created one, and I gave it the name of Cleanliness Sentiment Portfolio Overview. And again, as we saw on the overall table, you can use the values and sources to add specific columns. Here we are interested in the mentions and the sentiment score for the cleanliness and public health categories. Why do we also use the mentions and not only the score? Because we see, for example, if we filter this column by the cleanliness scores to understand which scores are quite low for specific hotels, we see, okay, these hotels over here have quite a low score, let's focus on them. But actually they don't have that many mentions, so there's not that much data for these hotels or not that much feedback for them to be really relevant for us to deep dive into them. But now, for example, if we look at this hotel, the W Barcelona, we see that they have quite a low score in cleanliness and a significant amount of mentions. So this might be a hotel that we want to look into further more in detail. Before we go into the details of the hotel, we also want to understand, are these trends also reflected against my competitors? Maybe my portfolio is doing great and just these hotels are lagging behind. Or is this really the case and I am also underperforming against my competition? So on the competitor section, you can easily review this. There's possibilities on your enterprise account to benchmark against specific brands or against specific hotels. So both options are very powerful. Let's first have a look at the option of brands. And for this, there's also a very powerful tile that you can use, which is called the graph tile. You can always add from this option in here, and you have a graph tile in here. For this example, we have created one for the performance score, where you have the underlying data of your competitor brands in here, and you can see the average scores of your competitors clearly on this line and your scores in here. So this already signals a red flag. We are under our competitors for the entire time frame of Q2, so we might need to look into something. To deep dive into the details, as we just did on the portfolio, we can create a custom tile with specific columns. So we have our hypothesis of cleanliness. Let's look even further into cleanliness by using one of the subcategories of cleanliness that we just saw on the presentation of the data before, room cleanliness. So we add the room cleanliness sentiment scores, we benchmark them against the previous quarter, and we see here the trends and filter the column by the trends, and we see, yes, our brand is indeed having quite a negative trend in terms of room cleanliness compared to our competitor brands. We might need to look into this. So we already saw before on the portfolio that the W Barcelona had a preoccupying trend in there. We would like to confirm this by using the same tile that we used, in this case to review against competitors exactly in the city of Barcelona. So my competitor hotels in the city of Barcelona, to see if our hypothesis match. In this case, we see exactly the same trend. Our hotel is one of the lowest performing here in terms of trends in room cleanliness. So we might need to look at the room cleanliness category of this specific hotel. So for this, you can always click on the specific hotel, or you can go to your dashboard in this case and search for the hotel in here to deep dive into the data. You can also search for specific competitor hotels if you want to have a more insightful look into the data behind that hotel. So we were mentioning before the impact scores as a relevant KPI to understand any trends. And if we look at the impact scores for the W Barcelona, we see already that the negative impact scores clearly have room cleanliness in here. So we see it has a minus 8.8 score in here. This means your performance scores for 87 for the previous quarter on this hotel could have gone up to 96, as you can see reflected on the tile when I hover over this option, if those complaints around room cleanliness had been addressed. And here we see a summary of what people are saying. So they're mentioning dirty carpet, stains on the carpet, windows are dirty, for example. We want to confirm our theory more in detail. If we look at the sentiment tile, again, filtered by trend, and immediately we spot cleanliness has the highest negative trend in this case. We might want to look at this more into detail. We saw a summary of the text of the reviews on the impact scores, but maybe we want to review the reviews one by one. We can click here on the negative reviews to understand what the text is saying. If we don't understand the text, we can just translate it, but basically we already see clearly again, so windows are dirty, dirty carpet. So different appliances at the room are being criticized as dirty. So we already have our keywords here. So we have gone all the way from the holistic view of the portfolio and the competitors to the hotel level to understand which semantics categories are affecting the hotel level and which keywords within that semantic category are affecting the hotel. So how do we report on these keywords? There's a couple of nice options of how you can do this. So from your reviews inbox, you can then again filter by your hotel, the time frame that you were reviewing, in this case Q2, and then you can create a report from here, and you can enter a keyword. So we saw the word dirty was being mentioned, for example, for dirty windows and carpets, and you can create the report, which will then appear in your exports. It would include the keyword that you have added of dirty. You can add your email address, and you can schedule this to be delivered on a recurring basis, let's say on a weekly basis on Monday morning to your email at your preferred time zone. And you can just save this report, and you would be getting this report on a regular basis. So that is one option. The report would basically look like this. You would have an overview of your reviews in here with their scores and so on, but more importantly, you would have the entire text of the review, including the keyword that you have filtered out here, so that you can understand what guests are exactly saying in this case. Now, another trick that you can use is you can go to your settings, and you can set specific email alerts for your hotel. So in this case, we were looking at the W Barcelona. So you can search here for your hotel and set specific keyword alerts to be delivered, and you would be getting daily email digest with any reviews that include this keyword delivered to your email, and then you can act on real time on that specific feedback. What happens if you're not getting enough feedback as much as you want? In this case, for this room cleanliness category that you have spotted, you can use your TrustYou survey for this. You can create a segmentation, for example, by specific categories, so that your survey stays nice and short, so that your conversion rates do not drop because of the survey being too long. But it gives the alternative of guests that really want to give you additional feedback to maybe give you feedback on cleanliness in this case. Then the cleanliness category appears here. You ask them a question about room cleanliness. Maybe they give you a great score, maybe not so great. If the score is negative, then you can ask them for more feedback so that you can understand, okay, what is it that guests are saying about my hotel here? What are their comments? And then you can go to your tasks menu, and you can create a so-called rule to get real-time alerts on this specific feedback. So you select your hotel here, in this case for a post-stay survey. You want to get for a specific question. We were mentioning the room cleanliness question in this case. As you saw, there was a negative trend for it. And you want to get this for negative scores to see what the comments of guests are in there and in real time. And then you just save this rule, and you get this delivered to your email with real-time alerts on this specific question. So those are some things that you can do to improve this feedback from guests. What do you do once you have already improved it? Well, you should market this, right? So as Rainer was saying before, why not expose to hotel guests that your hotel is doing great, that they're looking into the cleanliness and public health and hygiene of guests, so that you drive more bookings? You can use your meta review widgets for this, for example, or this newest widget from TrustYou, the Relevant Now widget, which would basically give you an overview of your health and safety scores, your cleanliness scores at your hotel, most recently, so that it remains relevant. So that's why the widget is called Relevant Now. It also gives the review volume number to guests so that they see, okay, your hotel is open and receiving a lot of guests. That's a good signal. In this case, I wouldn't recommend this hotel. So this is again the W Barcelona, to share this widget, as the scores are not so great. But if your hotel has improved in these scores, this is a nice thing that can be shared. And of course, there's also what Rainer was mentioning, the TrustYou Cleanliness Patch, which you can add in your website. You can take a small survey for it, and once you have your cleanliness patch, you can signal to your guests on your website that your hotel is clean and is doing great, and you can drive more bookings. So those are some of the best practices that we wanted to share with you today. We would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. And with that, I hand it over back to you, Valerie.
Thank you, Mike, so much. Take a break, take a breather from that presentation. Thank you so much for going through all of that with us. So yes, as you said, we will take a quick pause here to just see if there are any questions coming through. I know that we went through some of those steps a little bit quickly, so if you wanted us to backtrack or show you exactly where something could be found, we can do that. So you can either use the questions box, you can also chat us your questions. Either one is fine. We'll give it a minute or so. Okay, I don't see anything coming through so far, but we do have another part of the presentation. So if you want to maybe talk to your team, maybe click around and see if there are some questions that you do have. We will save some time at the end for additional questions as well. But to move things along, what we can do for now is go ahead and, oh wait, we just got the first question in. Okay, so the question is, where can we get the Trust You badge? So there were kind of two different ones that we talked about, the widget for relevant now, but I think badge has to do with cleanliness badge. So Mike, do you maybe want to scroll down that page and just show a little bit more about what they could find if they get to that link?
Exactly. So basically, you can find more information on the TrustYou's website here under Cleanliness Patch. To get the badge, you can find here a description of what the badge is and how the assessment works. So you can take a specific survey with different questions that you can answer. And once these questions have been answered, this is sent to our experts team that will review the results. And if the results are positive, then you would get a cleanliness badge as that widget that you can share on your website, as we saw on the example above here that you can insert into your website. So it's a very simple and straightforward process that you can do in a matter of minutes.
Yep, exactly. Thanks so much for going through that. We did have one other or a couple more questions coming in. So one, I think this is a good one. Does the competitor have to be part of Trust You in order for us to compare their score?
So in order to compare your scores, you need to compare them against hotels that are found on our database. But if you cannot find a specific hotel on our database for whichever reason, but our database covers hundreds of thousands of hotels, so most likely it's already there. Maybe you just need to type the name differently. If you cannot find it, you can just write to our team, and we will be happy to add that hotel in the database for you, and you will be able to immediately analyze all that data for that competitor.
Yeah, absolutely. But we do have very high coverage of our database, over 1 million accommodations across the database. So hopefully you would be able to find your competitor. And then a follow-up from the same person was, can we track feedback in any language? So can you talk a little bit about the different languages that we can analyze?
Yeah, exactly. So we have dozens of languages that are semantically analyzed. So you can track feedback. The semantic analysis works not only in English. So we did the example now in English, but it works for several languages. So most languages are included in there, and you can see the semantic analysis for the specific language of your interest. And also, as we saw briefly, you can even translate reviews if they're not on your native tongue. So you can translate to the language of your interest if you want to understand what the guest is specifically saying. So indeed, several languages are covered by the semantic analysis from TrustYou.
Okay, great. And then a couple more questions about the badge. So is the badge for a specific hotel, or can it be for the whole group? The way the assessment works, and Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that it does have to be on a hotel by hotel basis. So when you're starting the assessment, you do type it in for one specific hotel, and then we are able to grant the badge on a hotel by hotel basis. That's correct, right?
Correct. It's on a hotel basis, as we want to ensure that the specific hotel is the one that is signaling to guests, yes, it's safe to stay I'm at my hotel. So my hotel has covered all the necessary cleanliness measures. So indeed, the assessment is done on a hotel level.
Great. And then another question about badges, is it the only badge that we can get on TrustYou? So maybe, do you still have the kind of marketing section open on in your TrustYou account, Mike?
Yeah, sure. I mean, these
Cool.
are different widgets that you have on your TrustYou marketing module. So the badge is not available in here. It's available on the website as we just saw. But in here, depending on which TrustYou features you're using, you would see different widgets in here. So we just saw the relevant now, but you also have the meta review, for example, where you can have an overall preview of all the data that is being analyzed for your hotel across a couple of years. You can also see a preview in here of your meta review. And you also have your trust score, which summarizes all the online feedback for your hotel for the past couple of years. And badges, so which semantic categories your hotel is doing good at, for example. And if in case you have a TrustYou survey, you can also display your TrustYou survey reviews on your website to your guests. And for all of these widgets, you will always find the HTML code in here that you can just add into your website and easily show this data to your guests to market, hey, my hotel is listening to your feedback. You can feel safe here and book at our hotel.
Perfect, thank you. All right, well, I think those are most of the questions that are related to this topic specifically. There are a couple more, but I think they would be good for the end of the presentation. So thank you, Mike, so much for your time. If there are more questions that come through related to your presentation, I'll take them at the end and direct them to you. But for now, I'm going to pass things over to our product manager, Lorena, who's going to take us through some of the new features that are available in TrustYou. We've been talking a lot today about the analytics and survey products. Lorena is actually the product manager for our new live experience solution that we launched at the beginning of this year. We have some new exciting features that are now available within that product. So Lorena, I will hand things over to you.
Thank you, Valerie. Hello, everyone. If you're using our live product, you might have noticed that we have released a new statistic page called Chat Stats. In this new page, you will be finding statistics about the messages exchanged with your guests and between your own teams. With this first release, we wanted to replace the previous page that we had. Our focus was to give you usage overview on the available channels and show you trends that help you understand how messages flow in and out your inbox. In case you have not seen it yet, let me quickly demo it for you. So this is the page that you will find under Chat Stat in our new navigation. And this new page is composed by two different sections. One section is the guest chat, where you will find information about messages that you are exchanging with your guests, and the team chat, where you will see information that you are internally exchanging between your staff. So let me start with this one. With the guest chat, we introduce one single tile at the moment that we call messages, and it's showing information about the messages that you have received and sent during the selected time period. We also show here under a trend that will compare with the same previous period. If we go more in detail into this tile, we have divided in two sections. One section is about the inbound and the outbound messages. And if you have used the previous statistics page, you see that this information is similar to the one that we had in there. So basically what we are showing in here is the total amount of messages that you have exchanged. And you can see them on a graph, basically how these messages are changing over time. If you hover on the graph, you can have some information on a daily basis, for example, to compare how many messages have you sent and received that particular day. If you want to highlight a bit one particular information, then you can switch between the in and the out messages, and you also see the performance changing in the middle. If we go into the new section that we introduced, it is called channels. And right now what we are showing is a list of all the channels that you have in your live messaging product, and they are ordered by the usage of the channel. So for example, you can directly spot what is the channel that you are most using to communicate with your guests, and you will see some information about the messages that you are receiving and sending via this channel. You can also do a quick look inside the channel, and you will see also a graph that will show how these messages are performing over time. And you can do the same for the rest of the channels that you have been using. Now let's move to what you can find within the team chat part. So in here, we have added some statistics about the messages that you are exchanging between your own teams. In the first tile, what we are showing basically is the amount of users that has been active. So you can track how much your staff is using the team chat to communicate. In the second tile, what you see is the total amount of messages that you have exchanged with this new tool. So you have, for example, in here, a highlight on the direct messages that two persons are exchanging between them, but you can also highlight the group messages that you have and how is the flow of information in there. On the third tile, we want to show a bit of the interactions that you are having between your guest chats and your internal chats. So for example, in this graph, you can see, for example, how many internal notes from the conversations with your guest has been forwarded to the internal chat and how many guest messages has been forwarded. So you can track how much, let's say, your staff is interacting with these messages and forwarding to the teams for further discussion. Then finally, we have a couple of more tabs at the end that are a bit to show the performance or the exchange that the different groups of users are doing. So for example, the group style is showing how many groups or teams do you have in the product, the users that they have, and how they are using the team chat to communicate. And finally, on the last tile, you can also see a similar information, but it's based on each of the single users instead of the groups. So let me go back now to the presentation for a moment. When we have released this new statistics page, we also introduced a new in-tool survey that we will keep using in the future to improve our products. Therefore, I use this opportunity to encourage you to share your feedback using this tool every time you see a survey popping up, because this is your chance to directly contact the product manager and request new features and improvements for the products that you are using. So looking at the results, I can see that some users were expecting more from us on this style, but I can also see that a usage increase of this new page compared to the old one that we had, which is a positive sign for us. The main requests that we have been receiving on this new page are related to getting response time data. So you are pretty interested in knowing how fast your staff is getting back to your guests. And also they want to have some capabilities to export this data that we don't have at the moment. So we will be working on that feedback in the next month to deliver what you need in order to make profit of this page. Finally, one small update that we also did to the live messaging product is that we have added some additional PMSs, and now you can use them right away. So please, if you need more information on how to integrate, if you are using any of those, please contact our client success team if you have questions. And now I want to give you a brief on what can you expect from us in the next months. So to start, we are working on a dedicated space within this statistics page to track your consumption on paid channels. We believe that a product like live messaging requires more data and transparency regarding paid channels, so you have a better visibility on your expenses. In addition, we will give you access to your wallet balance directly from the settings in a new billing section that we are working for you. And while we are releasing all this, we are planning the next steps according to your feedback. We are working on a tile with information about response time, busy hours of the day, and in general, staff performance. And now I pass over to my colleague, Mikkel, who will also give you some additional information about the future. Mikkel.
Thank you, Lorena. I'm going to share my screen so I can present to you what we have in the near future. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm very pleased to introduce you to a new feature that we have been working on for the last months, and we want to release by the end of the year, the direct response for enterprise users. We want to enable our customers to respond to online reviews in a faster and easier way by responding directly from the tool without having to leave the TrustYou platform. Without the direct response, the process to respond to reviews starts by clicking the Respond buttons in the Inbox tab. As you can see, it opens a new browser window with the URL of the source where I need to log in, check the review, and respond to it. With a direct response in place, you won't have to leave the TrustYou platform, because after the setup is complete, you can respond directly to the reviews from the review inbox as if you were using the Respond with Template button. Staying focused on your job and getting the benefits from your predefined templates. We released this functionality some time ago for the single property users, the ones that manage one single hotel. But we listened to your request to make this feature happen for the enterprise user as well, the one who manages several hotels. We have started the integration with Booking.com, and I'm going to take you through the process to configure the setup and link your properties. The process starts from the setting page, where I find a new section called Direct Response with the available sources to be integrated with. We will increase the list with more sources in the future, and as you can see, Google is already planned and it will come right after Booking.com. Here I choose Booking.com and I am redirected to the summary page where I have an overview of the properties that I have been set up. In this case, as it is the first time, the list is empty, so I need to set up the integration. Clicking on the Get Started button, I am redirected to the Accounts Management page, where I can manage the Booking.com accounts that grant me access to the different properties. Adding an account and clicking on the button take me to the authorization page, where I need to verify that I am really the owner of the property and I authorize TrustYou to post-respond on my behalf. Clicking on the Authorize button, the process moves to the Booking.com page, where I need to enter my credentials, the username and password to validate that I am the truly owner of it. When it is done, I came back to the platform to the Property Management page. Here, in the column of the left, I have a list of all the properties retrieved from the Booking.com account. And on the right, I can see the list of properties available in the TrustYou platform to be mapped in the direct response. Our system has already automatically suggested some mappings. You can see for example, at the top, and it is based on the source ID stored in the Booking.com account. Other mappings at the bottom are empty, and I need to choose the TrustYou property to map. Clicking on the No Mapping placeholder, a list of all the pending properties to be mapped is displayed, and I can choose the one to map. Clicking on the Select button, I update all the mappings with my selections. Finally, I save the work that I have done by clicking on the Save button, and I am redirected to the summary page again, but in this case, I can see the list of properties that I mapped before with a message to inform me that the future will be available in the next 48 hours. Once the setup is complete, all the reviews added to the platform can be responded using the direct response, and all the users with access to that property can use the direct response as well. We hope that you find this feature useful and make your easier daily work. And now, Valerie, I pass over to you so we could attend if there are any questions.
All right, thank you so much, Lorena and Mikhail, for going through that. So we did kind of have two different sections of the in the last few minutes. So we had kind of Lorena present what we have now, and then the last couple of features and what Mikhail presented is what we will have in the future. So these are features that are coming in the next couple of months. So we will definitely be in direct communication with all of you who are in attendance and all of our customers when exactly those features will get launched. We're looking for definitely being able to have those by the next product event that we have, which will be at the end of the year. So we'll keep you informed about that, but as you can see, making good progress already. So if there are any other questions, you can go ahead and send them in. So one question is about direct response. If you're just doing this for one hotel, this doesn't quite apply. Yes, we've already had direct response for Google and Booking.com if you're just managing a single property for quite some time. So you can use that feature as of today. But what this feature is specifically for is for if you're managing multiple properties within TrustYou. So that will definitely help many people who are responsible for not just one, but multiple hotels within their portfolio. All right, thanks everyone so much for your questions. These have been great. If you do have additional questions, please feel free to type them in. I don't think that we'll have time to go through them as we are at the top of the hour, but thank you all so much for joining. And as promised, we did randomly select a attendee that we've had for the full presentation to win the $50 Amazon gift card. So I'm excited to say that Rosalie Wang, you are the lucky winner. So congratulations. And we'll be contacting you via email so that you can claim your prize. So thank you so much for joining us today. Our next event will be in December, so please keep an eye out for some updates regarding that. And then also, as I will just go ahead and maybe change the presenter back to me, I'll share this last slide to thank you all so much for joining us. The slides from today's presentation, as well as the recording of the entire presentation, will be sent out by the end of the day tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. But since we are out of time, I'll say thank you one more time to our presenters. Mikkel, Lorena, Michael, thank you so much. Rachel, thank you for joining us today. And take care to everyone on the line. Hope everyone stays happy and healthy, and we'll see you next time. Bye.